The morning sun barely touched the horizon when Sarah Chen stepped onto the training grounds in Coronado. At 5'4", she looked more like a college student than a combat instructor. She faced the most skeptical audience of her career. SEAL Team 7 wanted a man. They wanted someone who understood what real combat felt like. Commander Harris knew the stakes. He'd fought to keep her, but he knew today would make or break her reputation in the special operations community. "They're not happy, Chen," Harris warned. "Lieutenant Morrison is leading the group. They won't respect credentials. You'll have to show them something new." Sarah wasn't intimidated. She'd spent years letting her skills speak louder than words. "I'll handle it," she replied, her voice steady. Inside, the silence was a test. Lieutenant Morrison stepped forward, built like a linebacker, with a scar running from eyebrow to cheek. "What exactly are you going to teach us that we don't already know?" Morrison asked. One of his teammates smirked. The challenge was laid bare. "How many of your instructors," Sarah countered, "were smaller and weaker than your average opponent? You rely on strength, but what happens when strength isn't enough? What happens when you're injured, exhausted, or outnumbered? What happens when someone takes your weapon in those critical seconds before you can draw a sidearm?" The men were listening now. "I'll make you a deal," she said. "Take my weapon. If I can't show you something useful in 63 seconds, I'll recommend a new instructor." She pulled out a standard rubber training knife. Morrison's eyes narrowed. He was at least 6 inches taller and outweighed her by 80 pounds. Morrison stepped onto the mat. He disarmed opponents across the globe. To him, this would be easy. To the others, it was an inevitability. "Whenever you're ready, Lieutenant," Sarah said, her voice calm. "Take it from me. Use whatever technique you think will work." He didn't hesitate. He reached for her wrist with his left, his right hand moving for the knife. He expected a struggle of strength. He didn't get one. What happened in those next 63 seconds would be discussed in the SEAL community for years to come. Sarah Chen was about to set the Mitchell standard.
Morrison's left hand closed around Sarah's wrist with practiced precision. His grip was designed to dominate. In the same instant, his right hand reached for the knife. He had executed this movement thousands of times. It was muscle memory, refined through years of training. But Sarah Chen was not like any opponent he had faced. The moment Morrison's fingers touched her wrist, Sarah moved. Her body shifted with an impossible fluidity. Instead of resisting, she moved with his grip, stepping into his space faster than he ever expected. Her free hand came up in a tight arc, striking the inside of his elbow, a precise hit on a nerve cluster. Morrison's hand spasmed for a fraction of a second. That was all Sarah needed. She rotated her wrist inside his grip, using leverage against his thumb, the weakest point of any hand. The knife dropped from her hand, falling behind her, out of immediate reach. She was already moving again. She stepped behind his arm, using his own momentum. It was a basic joint lock, applied with perfect timing. Morrison felt his balance shift. He was being redirected, his body moving where she wanted it to go. He tried to use his superior strength, but Sarah was always one step ahead, reading him like a book. 3 seconds in, Sarah transitioned. Her foot hooked behind his ankle while her hands pushed his chest. Morrison stumbled, taking 3 staggering steps before catching himself. The other SEALs watched in silence. This wasn't supposed to happen. Morrison was their best, but this woman had made him look clumsy. Morrison's face flushed. He charged again, abandoning technique for raw aggression to end this quickly. Sarah remained calm. Anger made him predictable. As he lunged, she wasn't where he expected her to be. She placed a hand on his back and gave a light push, perfectly timed to accelerate his own forward motion. 8 seconds had elapsed. Petty Officer Davis stepped forward. His tone was less cocky now. "Both of you together if you want," she said. Morrison and Davis accepted, flanking her from different angles. They moved together, grabbing for her arms and shoulders. For a brief moment, they thought they had her. Then Sarah dropped her weight suddenly. The unexpected shift pulled both men downward and off balance. Her elbow caught Davis in the solar plexus, a controlled strike that knocked the wind out of him. She struck Morrison's wrist, hitting the pressure point. His fingers loosened involuntarily. She spun away. 12 seconds total. They had underestimated her. They were learning a painful lesson about technique and timing. In the geometry of combat, size is just a variable. Discipline is the constant. This is the ground report.
Commander Harris stood in the observation room above the training mat, watching through the one-way glass. He had been joined by Master Chief Williams, a veteran with a reputation for assessing talent with a single glance. "She's good," Williams said quietly. "Really good. How long has she been doing this?" Harris replied, 8 years as an instructor, but she's been training since she was 6. Her father was a master in Taiwan. Traditional kung fu, judo, and weapons training. When the family moved to the States, she never stopped. She added Brazilian jiu-jitsu, Krav Maga, and Filipino martial arts. She holds black belts in 3 different disciplines. Williams nodded. "I can see it. She's not just using one style, she's flowing between them, taking what works." On the mat, the SEALs were conferring, developing a new strategy. If 2 couldn't take her, maybe 5 could. Petty Officer Chen, the team's sniper, spoke up. "We need to think differently. She's using our momentum against us. We need to be more patient, more controlled." Morrison nodded. They were changing the terms of the fight. Sarah watched them all. This was the real test. 5 highly skilled operators working together was a different challenge. Most would panic under this pressure. But Sarah had spent her life preparing for situations exactly like this. Rodriguez made the first move, a feint. Sarah shifted, but it was a distraction. Morrison moved in from behind. She sensed the attack. She ducked, rolled, and surfaced in the center of their formation. 16 seconds had passed. Before they could react, she swept her leg. Rodriguez hit the mat more surprised than hurt. Davis moved in immediately. Davis tried to capitalize while she was low, but Sarah was already moving. She drove her shoulder into his core. Morrison and Chen moved together. Sarah grabbed Morrison's wrist and pulled. They collided in a tangle of limbs. Master Chief Williams let out a whistle. "She's thinking 3 moves ahead. It's like watching a chess master." Martinez moved with caution. He locked a grip specifically designed to control an opponent. For a moment, he had her. Then Sarah defied physics. She turned into the grip and pressed. Pressure points sent a tingling numbness through his arm. 28 seconds passed. She used him as a temporary shield. Harris smiled. Superior technique beat strength. The SEALs were showing frustration. Sarah had been economical. She was making them work harder than she was. They moved in for the final rush. Overwhelming numbers. But Sarah Chen didn't escape. She attacked.
33 seconds. In high-stakes tactical training, that is an eternity. For Sarah Mitchell, it was the moment technique overcame raw power. 5 Navy SEALs converged from all angles. Their movements were a symphony of synchronized pressure, honed through years of combat. They anticipated overwhelming her through sheer numbers. What they didn't see was that Sarah wasn't targeting the men. She was targeting the gaps. She drove forward between Morrison and Chen. Her speed was a calculation they hadn't factored into their tactical equation. In one fluid motion, her elbow found Chen's sternum. It wasn't meant to injure. It was meant to disrupt their momentum. She spun, a tight arc that forced Davis back. She wasn't looking for a knockout. She was buying herself a single second of breathing room. 39 seconds. Rodriguez moved for the neutralize, a solid grappling move that should have ended it. But Sarah was already 3 steps ahead. She made herself heavy. A sharp elbow to the ribs loosened his grip just enough for her to vanish from his reach. Martinez went low, smart but predictable. Sarah saw the geometry of the tackle before he even committed. Her knee met his shoulder with precise force. Now she was in the center, surrounded. Most fighters see this as the end. Sarah saw it as her greatest tactical advantage. When you are surrounded, your opponents have to be careful not to hit each other. She used their own numbers against them. 46 seconds. Simple mechanics. Pushing the elbow while pulling the wrist. Rodriguez wasn't fighting a person. He was fighting physics. Chen threw a punch to set up the clinch. Sarah slipped it by inches. Minimal. Efficient. Her counter was immediate. 53 seconds. They grabbed empty air. She was a ghost in the machine of their training, moving where they weren't. Upstairs, Master Chief Williams could only watch. 30 years in the business, and he'd never seen movement like this. "She's making them look like amateurs," Williams said. "And these are the best operators in the world." Nearly a minute of continuous explosive assault had drained them. Sarah was breathing harder, but she wasn't spent. She was just beginning. 60 seconds. She didn't defend. She attacked. A knee to the shoulder, a palm to the chin. Momentum. Stopped. A redirection he'd never seen. Her hand caught his wrist. Her foot hooked his ankle. Chen hit the mat. Not hard, but final. And that, Sarah said, is what happens when you rely too much on strength and not enough on technique. 63 seconds of mastery.
The training facility was silent. In exactly 63 seconds, Sarah Mitchell had dismantled 5 elite Navy SEALs. She hadn't even broken a sweat. Morrison asked, "What the hell was that?" Sarah's answer was simple: asymmetric combat. She didn't fight on their terms of force. She made their strength irrelevant. "I didn't let you hold me," she explained. "The key is to control what happens after contact." She used their own grip as an anchor to control their momentum. Combat isn't about memorizing techniques. It's about principles, balance, leverage, and reading the tells, the micro movements that happen before a punch is even thrown. Skepticism turned to respect. They were ready to learn now. The demonstration had proven that informed intelligence could overcome raw power. The hard part was over. Sarah Mitchell had broken the wall of doubt. This is the ground report. Strategic psychology, human survival. Until next time.
The afternoon session began differently than the morning. Instead of skeptical operators testing their instructor, Sarah had 5 attentive students. She had them in a semicircle with notebooks. It was unusual for SEAL training, but Sarah insisted, "Your brains are trained for tactics, but these details are easy to forget." She began with body mechanics, using a skeleton model to explain how joints move. Applying force against natural movements creates pain and compliance. That is physics and biology. She pointed to the median nerve cluster. A precise strike here causes temporary numbness. It is not magic, it is a 2 or 3 second advantage, which in combat is all you need. Next was weapon retention. Sarah explained the common mistakes. Number 1, holding too tightly. A rigid hand is easier to manipulate than a relaxed one. Variable grip is key. When you grip with maximum force, your muscles fatigue and you become inflexible. Hold firmly enough for control, but loose enough to adjust when attacked. Mistake number 2, focusing only on the weapon. While you focus on the knife, your opponent might be setting up a strike to your face or a kick to your knee. Maintain awareness. Then came rifles. Rifles have mass and leverage. Sarah demonstrated how to turn the rifle into a lever, using the opponent's own grab to off-balance them. Physics in motion. Rodriguez shared a story of a narrow hallway where rifles were useless. Sarah showed how to use the walls and angles as assets. In tight spaces, a pistol and movement are your best tools. Control the center of mass, not the knife hand. Take away the balance, and the weapon becomes less threatening. That is the difference between techniques and principles. Something remarkable happened. The SEALs stopped thinking of her as an instructor and started thinking of her as part of their team. They asked sophisticated questions and offered their own field insights. Morrison approached her at the end. "Ma'am, I want to apologize. We came in thinking we would show you that you did not belong. Instead, you showed us how much we still have to learn." Davis asked her, "Why teach? With your skills, you could be on an operational team." Sarah's answer was rooted in her history, watching her father teach martial arts. The mark of a true master is not how many you defeat, but how many you can teach to defend themselves. Every student he taught went out better prepared to protect others. She told them, "You will face threats I will never encounter. But if something I teach saves your life or your teammate's life, then I have done something that matters. That is why I teach." The 5 SEALs were silent. They understood that Sarah Chen was not just teaching techniques. She was someone who genuinely cared about their survival and success. "Tomorrow," she said with a smile, "we work on multiple attackers and improvised weapons. Get some rest. You are going to need it."
Welcome to the Ground Report. Tonight we look past the drills to the human core of performance. In a dimly lit restaurant, the Mitchell standard was measured. That evening, 5 SEALs gathered. The conversation turned to Sarah Chen. They sat in the shadows of skepticism, processing what they had witnessed. "I've been in this job 12 years, Morrison said. "I've trained with special forces from 15 countries. That woman, she is on another level," Martinez agreed. It was the why that got him. She explained the mechanics, making the complex suddenly feel intuitive and unforgettable. Chen studied his notes. Every technique can be modified, he noted. It wasn't just a lesson, it was a toolkit she had handed them. Davis was impressed. They had entered as jerks, questioning her. She didn't get defensive, she just proved her point. That was true confidence. Rodriguez had done his research. Sarah Chen wasn't just lucky. She was a champion, a theorist, and a consultant for global special operations. The Navy didn't hire her to fill a quota, Rodriguez told them. They hired her because she is legitimately one of the best in her field. Morrison agreed. She likely expected their attitude. She had spent a career being undeniably excellent just to be heard. A toast was raised. Then a voice joined in. "The world needs you to be better than half as good," she said. "It needs excellence." She joined them, refusing the title of ma'am. Over Thai food, the instructor became human, a journey defined by obstacles they had never considered. She spoke of a master in the Philippines, a tiny man, but dangerous. He taught her survival isn't about strength, it's about efficiency. Martinez asked, had she used it for real? She recounted an LA parking garage. She escaped without anyone getting seriously hurt. But the second time was an ambush in the Middle East. Close quarters, no backup. She didn't elaborate, and the SEALs understood the silence. To Sarah, it was about impact. She taught elite forces because the stakes were life and death. Saving lives was her true contribution. Later, Morrison walked her to her car. He apologized for his assumptions, for thinking her appointment was merely political. He was wrong. "The important thing," Sarah replied, "is that you were willing to change your mind. That is the mark of a good operator." "Looking forward to tomorrow," Morrison said. Sarah promised to push them harder. The Mitchell Standard continues.
Day 2 began at dawn. Sarah Mitchell had prepared a gauntlet designed to break the SEALs' reliance on perfect technique. She knew that in real combat, technique is the first thing to fail when exhaustion and fear take hold. Stress was the day's primary weapon. The team was pushed to total physical failure before the combat drills even started. Exhausted and gasping, they had to defend against her attacks. "Welcome to real combat," she told them. "You're never going to fight at your best. You need to learn how your body performs when it's failing." Next was environmental awareness. In the field, there are no flat dojos. Debris, slippery patches, and obstacles became active hazards. Chen failed first, backing into a corner. He had tunnel vision, focusing so hard on the threat that he forgot the world around him. The final test was the most brutal: multiple attackers. Rodriguez held out for 30 seconds before fatigue clouded his judgment. He engaged one and ignored the others. In seconds, a simulated knife strike from behind ended the encounter. Survival, not victory, was the goal. "Combat is about making complex decisions under pressure," Sarah explained. "The real skill is knowing which tool to use and when." By day's end, the transformation was clear. The Mitchell Standard was no longer just a drill. It was their new baseline for survival.
On the third day of training, Sarah Mitchell introduced a concept that would redefine the 5 SEALs' understanding of survival: adaptive combat theory. She shifted the focus from static techniques to real-time analysis, teaching them to create solutions on the fly in the heart of chaos. To test them, she constructed a labyrinth, a multi-level simulation filled with narrow corridors, hidden threats, and near-zero visibility. But there was a twist. Mid-scenario, the lights would cut out, or an injury was simulated, forcing them to operate in a world of shifting rules and sudden darkness. Sarah's message was blunt. In real operations, there are no perfect solutions, only choices between bad options and less bad ones. Pride, she warned, kills more operators than bullets do. She taught them that there is no shame in retreating to find a better tactical position. Chen, the sniper, struggled with the chaos. He wanted time and precision. Sarah told him that in close combat, you don't take one perfect shot, you take 10 imperfect actions. In their final test, the team hunted Sarah through a mock urban environment. It was an intense 40-minute chase through shadows and debris. "Outstanding," she told them. They had succeeded, but more importantly, they had learned to think differently. The Mitchell standard was now their standard. As the training ended, Sarah knew these lessons would ripple outward, saving lives she'd never meeting. Tomorrow, the final push would begin. The final day of training arrived with accomplishment and melancholy. Over 4 days, a bond had formed that transcended the student-teacher role. They had pushed each other and grown together in ways that would shape their lives. Sarah planned this final validation with extreme care. The morning consisted of scenario testing, a marathon combining weapon retention, defense, and tactical communication into one final test. Each SEAL faced a 20-minute scenario simulating the worst possible conditions: simultaneous threats, equipment failure, and intense time pressure. Morrison went first. A simple weapon retention drill quickly evolved into a high-stakes hostage rescue with non-compliant civilians. He handled it with composure. When his primary weapon was lost, he transitioned smoothly to hand-to-hand tactics without a moment of panic. "Excellent," Sarah noted, "but your breathing became irregular toward the end. In a real firefight, that would have compromised your accuracy." Rodriguez faced a different test. Starting in a compromised position, injured and with limited mobility, escaping a secured area under pursuit. He struggled at first, trying to use techniques that required full mobility, but he quickly adapted, relying on tactical thinking over physical prowess. "That's what I wanted to see," Sarah told him. "Being able to adjust your tactics to your current capabilities is the key to survival." Davis, Chen, and Martinez faced scenarios tailored to their specific weaknesses: improvised weapons, rapid decisions, and deep moral ambiguity. All 5 showed remarkable improvement. They moved with a confidence and tactical sophistication that had been entirely absent just 4 days earlier. More importantly, they learned to correct mistakes in real time. They weren't just following instructions, they were starting to think like masters. In the afternoon, the roles reversed. Sarah had each SEAL teach a concept to the others, reinforcing their own internalization of the principles. They explained not just what to do, but why to do it. Morrison, Rodriguez, Davis, Chen, and Martinez had truly internalized the foundation. Sarah was pleased. This was the hallmark of true understanding. Her students were ready for the field and ready to pass the torch. As the session wound down, Commander Harris and Master Chief Williams arrived for the closing ceremony with certificates and words of recognition. "Gentlemen," Harris said, "your willingness to be proven wrong and to learn from a master is what separates good operators from great ones." Williams presented Sarah with a challenge coin, a rare token of respect. "Instructor Chen, thank you for teaching these men how to think." As Sarah drove away, she knew these skills would save lives. That possibility was her fuel, making the hard work and skepticism worthwhile. The story of the 63 seconds will be legend, but the real story was the 4 days that followed. Skepticism becoming respect, resistance becoming receptiveness. The mark of a true master is in how many you can teach to defend others. This has been the Ground Report. Informed courage, mastered.